The hurricane left a scar across our town, roofs torn off like paper, cars half buried in sand, trees uprooted and slumped like tired giants. My house stood. It was the only one on the block that didn't look like it had been through a war. For that, my neighborhood didn't praise me. They accused me. A week after the storm, the HOA sent a letter demanding $11 million, claiming my house caused the damage. I thought it was a sick joke. The lawyers did not laugh. So why would surviving become a crime? When I moved to Clearwater Ridge, I thought I'd found the kind of place where people kept their porches neat and their tempers quieter than the wind. Palm trees lined the streets. Neighbors waved in the morning. And there were potlucks in the park where kids ran, with too much sugar and no sense of time. After years of overtime and double shifts, I finally had the home I'd planned for. Not flashy, but stubborn, steel-reinforced frame, aerodynamic roof lines, impact-resistant windows. My wife used to joke I loved bolts more than people. Maybe she was right that I wasn't showy. I fixed gutters, fussed over the garden, and kept the lawn tidy. I went to the occasional HOA meeting, you know the type. Rules about mailbox flags and paint shades. Committees to debate whether holiday lights must be white. It seemed petty until one day it mattered. The HOA board gave the impression of being small-town caretakers, but slowly, I learned they were more like gatekeepers. Their language always smelt of propriety, community standards, property values, and mutual respect. What I didn't see was how those words could be used like a net when the hurricane warning came. Our block did what it always did. We prepared. Boards up, sandbags stacked at the garage, last-minute grocery runs. My house wasn't built for show. It was built for storms. I had planned the foundation to resist, uplift, and designed the eaves to cut the pressure of gusts. When the storm hit, the sound of wind was like a train coming through the neighborhood for hours. I thought, as every sane person did, about the worst and hoped for the best. After the sky cleared, the first meeting after the storm was packed. People wanted to know how to apply for relief, how to get contractors, and how to make insurance move faster. Instead, the meeting turned toward me like a weather vane. Marjorie Benson, the HOA president, spoke with a kind of practiced calm that made her words land heavy. Mr. Callahan's house exhibited measurable aerodynamic deviation from community structures, she said. We believe his design redistributed wind forces, increasing damage to adjacent properties. The board recommends reparations. The room was quiet for a long second, then a few tentative nods, mostly from people who had already lost everything and were desperate for any claim that might shore up money. I asked for the evidence, for the engineer's report. Someone offered me a folded page at the back of the room like a loaded card. That was the beginning. Notices were posted on my door. Fines arrived for the strangest reasons: $500 for nonconformity in disaster response and $200 for post-event landscaping irregularity. They made up potholes and rules and used them like pebbles to pelt me into silence. My name joined a list on the clubhouse bulletin: non-compliant homeowner. Doors that used to open for me are now closed. People walked across the street when they saw me approach. Rumors did the rest. Someone said I'd used illegal materials. Another whispered I'd rigged vents. A neighbor I'd helped once with a broken fence crossed themselves when our paths met. It's wild how quickly a community will disown someone if the story is right. Fear makes people selfish. Grief makes them look for a reason. I hired a lawyer who smelt of old coffee and courtroom patience. He said 3 things plainly. The letter was legally flimsy. The HOA had motive, and litigation would be expensive and long. They can drag you, he warned. They don't have to be right to hurt you. He was right. The HOA had a disaster policy and a strange clause about disproportionate benefit in plain language. If they could show one property caused extra damage, the association could redirect payouts in a way that created a windfall for the board. I tried to keep the narrative public. I uploaded a video that night, shaky phone, my voice cracking more from disbelief than emotion. They want to sue me for surviving, I said plainly, held the letter up to the camera, and asked neighbors not to believe the rumor before checking the facts. The video went viral. Reporters called. For the first week, I had the kind of attention I'd never wanted. 2 million views, phone numbers for journalists, and emails thanking me for speaking up. I thought exposure would stop them. Instead, it made them angrier. They closed ranks. The HOA filed suit, officially asking for $11 million in damages for my home's alleged redirection of storm forces. The insurance company, smelling a complicated liability, joined on the side that would protect their payout strategies. I became a headline. Man sued for surviving hurricane. People called it survival guilt. Others called it poetic justice. To me, it felt like a slow strangulation. People testified in depositions. One woman said she'd seen strange currents near my roof. Another claimed I'd been warned and refused to evacuate. A claim impossible to prove, but easy for the jury of public opinion to swallow. The HOA painted a picture, a man who was built differently, who stood as an island while others were washed away. That picture made sense to some. It fed into how we like to make sense of randomness. When misfortune slaps us in the face, we look for a cause. Even when nature has none, the core of their case was an engineering report. They waved it like a banner. When I asked for a copy, they stonewalled. Pending verification, their attorney said. It was a magician's trick. Hide the method and rely on the spectacle. I, quietly and without grand gestures, started digging. Public records sometimes hide things in plain sight if you know where to look. Late one night, I found metadata that didn't match the narrative. The report's author was not a licensed engineer. The file's edit log showed revisions from a personal account linked to Marjorie's family that I felt my stomach drop. This was not just small-town spite. This was a constructed narrative with a constructed author. I saved the copy to a drive and sent it to my lawyer. We prepared to expose it at the hearing. The hearing day was a blur of formalities, camera lenses, and the kind of silence that arrives when a room collectively holds its breath. I handed over a flash drive with the file. The court tech loaded it. The projector displayed creation dates, user IDs, and edit timestamps. It laid the forgery out in pixels, a document written by someone with a history of falsifying simulations, and edited by the HOA president's close relative. Marjorie's expression changed in front of the camera, first a tightening, then a pale, stunned hush. Her attorney objected, but the judge had already seen it. The room muttered. The judge's tone turned hard. This court will not be used to weaponize grief through falsified documents, he said. He allowed my countersuit to move forward, defamation, harassment, and emotional distress, outside the courthouse. Reporters swarmed. A local network aired the footage. The story shifted shape. For the first time in months, I wasn't just the accused survivor. I was the man with the evidence. That shift changed things, but it didn't fix the damage done. There were nights I replayed every conversation, every unopened door, every whispered accusation. I had to remind myself that justice in public doesn't hurry private. Healing, the day the judge read the ruling. I sat as still as a man can be when he is full of too many feelings to speak. The courtroom felt smaller somehow, the air thick with the history of all the cases that had passed beneath its roof. The judge read slowly, each sentence a measured instrument. The HOA of Clearwater Ridge is found liable for defamation and fraudulent litigation. The plaintiff, Mr. Callahan, is awarded restitution and additional damages, he said. Marjorie's face crumpled as if someone had suddenly told her the texture of the world had changed. I felt no gloating. I felt what I imagine people feel when an earthquake stops and they realize their house still stands, not triumphant, but relieved and raw. Reporters waited on the courthouse steps like seabirds. Microphones thrust, cameras humming. I said what I'd said plenty before, but this time my voice didn't wobble. I built this house so my family would have a place to come back to, I told them. I never expected survival to be turned into a crime. That line got clipped and sent across the country. I don't regret it. It was the truth made short. The fallout was quick. The HOA board dissolved. Investigations were launched into ethics violations. Marjorie issued statements that read like someone trying to put a broken vase back together with words. The insurance company quietly settled claims and issued a public apology. Some members of the old board resigned and moved on. Others tried defensive explanations that sounded like the rustle of old pages. But the most unexpected thing was the neighborhood's slow return. People who had avoided me stopped and apologized. Some came with food, others with awkward, necessary questions about construction and safety. A few who testified against me privately confessed they'd been scared into it, afraid of losing their own claims. their own chance at recovery. Fear, I learned, can make people behave in ways they regret. Then a different kind of call came. Researchers from a university engineering department wanted to look at my house. They'd been following the case and thought the design elements could inform safer residential construction. Engineers walked my house like children at a museum, measuring, noting, asking unashamedly practical questions. They ran analyses that I didn't understand in detail, but the conclusion was simple. Certain elements of the design distributed wind loads in a way that reduced uplift and structural failure. I remember sitting on my porch watching them tape and measure, thinking about how strange the arc of a life can be. What made me a target made me a model. That irony was pure and sharp. The same features the HOA tried to demonize became the features experts praised. When news outlets picked that part up, the public story changed gears. Headlines read differently. From man sued for surviving hurricane to home design inspires new safety standards. I didn't seek that spotlight. I just wanted the fight to stop. But once it changed, I realized how the narrative had been reframed. We weren't arguing whether survival was deserved. We were asking how to make survival accessible to more people the days after. The verdict were quieter than I expected. It's odd how the end of a battle doesn't translate immediately into peace. There were still phone calls to return, settlements to sign, and interviews that looped. I got restitution that covered legal costs and more. We used some of it to repair the neighbors' properties as a gesture of goodwill, not because I was forced but because I wanted to seed healing our neighborhood. Reorganized. The old HOA disbanded, and a new community council formed. It was messy and human, filled with ordinary people learning to govern without secrets. They posted minutes openly. They declared conflicts of interest. They voted publicly rather than behind closed doors. They asked me to help draft bylaws to protect homeowners from the kind of predatory practices I'd endured. I agreed because I wanted to make sure no one else would be at the mercy of fabricated reports or secret agendas. That work felt like a kind of repair that mattered more than any settlement. It wasn't vengeance. It was prevention. I taught neighbors how to document, how to file complaints, and how to demand transparency. We set up a hotline for anyone who felt targeted. Slowly, our community shape shifted from suspicion to cooperation. I also started volunteering with disaster relief groups, teaching homeowners how to prepare, record, and fight unfair denials. Some days I'd go out and look at damaged roofs and point out how a small change in eave angle could reduce uplift. Others, I'd help a widow file a complaint against an unscrupulous contractor. Those moments felt like the opposite of the courtroom. Direct, tactile, human. Every so often, someone drove through Clearwater Ridge just to look. We became a kind of odd pilgrimage, a place where a house became both controversy and classroom. Engineers coined a colloquial name, the Callahan frame, and contractors started using elements of it. Not because of me, but because it worked. I got calls from other towns asking how to retrofit homes to the same standard. The idea that my work might save lives felt nearly impossible when the HOA was at my throat. Now it felt like purpose that I won't pretend everything was fixed. There were nights when the wind reminded me of other nights. The way it rattled the windows. The way silence sat heavy. Old wounds recovered differently than broken timber. But slowly, the wounds became less raw. I stopped flinching at the mail slot. I stopped imagining every knock as a threat. I learned to tell my story without choking on the anger. And sometimes I even told it with a small, private smile. People ask whether I forgave Marjorie. Forgiveness is complicated. I feel something like a release, not a forgetting. Not a forgetting of the harm, but the recognition that fear and power can twist good intentions into harm. I hope she found a place where she could learn that leadership is a responsibility, not a right to punish. The second storm that came 2 years later felt different. We had plans, supplies, and neighbors who talked to each other instead of looking away. When the wind hit, we moved together. Families helped strap down shutters, moved valuables to higher ground, and shared generators. Houses with retrofit features that once made my neighbors suspicious held. The difference wasn't only in concrete and bolts, it was in the way people looked out for one another. Now, when I stand on the porch at dusk, the sky turning the color of old coins, I sometimes take out that first letter and read it. It's ridiculous on the page, the formal language, the huge number, and the assumption that survival is causation. But the letter, absurd as it was, taught me something crucial, that resilience is a thing you build by design, by law, and by stubborn kindness. It taught me how to tell the truth loudly enough to be heard. If you're watching this and you've ever felt small in the face of committees, signatures, or rules that feel like cages, know this: paperwork is powerful only if people let it be. When the system is used to hurt, fight the lie with evidence, with patience, and with the help of others. Build your case like you build a house, one careful, measured element at a time. My house still stands, not as a monument to me, but as proof that careful work, steadfastness, and the willingness to speak can tilt the tide. Some storms are weather, some storms are people. Survive both, and you have a story worth telling, and maybe a safer place for the next person who comes home and needs. Once they tried to make my survival a crime, I turned it into a lesson. And if this story gives one person the courage to stand up when rules are used as weapons, then the wind didn't only pass, it taught us how to build better for what comes next.